Welcome to Common Mansplaining, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Welcome back as always. Great to see you guys. Christian, how's it going?
Scruffy looking nerf herder as always.
Oh man, yeah, I'm still having this sound malfunction. Give me like 5 seconds.
Sure.
All right, try now.
Yeah, Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect. I don't know what happened, but yeah, it's working now. All right, beautiful. All right, guys. Today we have a fun one as always. I don't think we ever have a non-fun one, right? We just everything we do is just the best.
Yeah.
What can I say?
Yeah.
But today we're going to talk about some recent events. That is the government shutdown and the demolition of the ballroom or the demolition of the East Wing to make way for the ballroom, right? The big beautiful ballroom.
Yeah.
So let's start with the shutdown. The first thing to know about government shutdowns is that I have no idea why they even happen. And that's not to say that I don't understand the mechanisms or why it exists and the history behind it. Ultimately, for those who truly don't know why it happens, basically the government has a certain amount of money that's approved and funding for the government to operate, and eventually that money runs out, right? And so then you find yourself in a situation where you either have to approve more funding or you just stop, which is weird because
Yeah.
you don't stop paying, you don't stop doing the job, right? Like the government doesn't go away; they just stop getting money.
Some areas they go away.
Right, sometimes, right?
Yeah, a lot of regulation, oversight. Yeah, optional stuff goes away. Yeah.
Right. So, right, and of course, this can happen for any number of reasons, and it usually it's not. Let's start off by saying it's not supposed to happen, right? What's supposed to happen is the government's supposed to get together, figure it out, fund the government. Obviously, in a perfect world, we should be in a spot where we don't ever actually lapse over the money that we've approved because we're always so fiscally responsible that we know what we're doing, right?
Yeah, we shouldn't. I mean, the root of this, the vulnerability that both parties have had is they've been willing to run unprecedentedly high deficits.
Yes. Yes. Like outrageous. Like, yeah. And I'll be the first to admit, for those listening who like to hear me kind of acknowledge the problems in my own side. 40 years ago when I was growing up, 30 years ago, easily the Republicans were the side of fiscal responsibility, like without even thinking about it. Like it was Reagan and Laffer were very solid. I mean, obviously there's going to be some bad apples here and there, but in general, like as I'm going through, like as we went through the years, Newt Gingrich was far more fiscally responsible, for example, than the opposition. In general. And this is just like philosophically, positionally the case too. The liberals, the concept is just bigger government, more expense, more at the federal level, and the conservatives is less federal government, less expense, less expenditure. So, in theory, the conservative side is supposed to be the side that holds down the expenses and says, "Look, no, this is the line, and we just can't go over this." And the liberals should be the side that says, well, let's just spend a little bit more. And in theory, that's historically what it's been too, right? Like over the last 30, 40 years, most of the shutdowns that have occurred have been the Republicans trying to hold out for more fiscal responsibility, essentially. They're trying to say, look, you guys want to spend way too much. We're already at a huge deficit. Let's not go there. Of late, however, I will admit that it's been the Republican Party who has seemed to be less fiscally responsible. And when I say that, I mean largely Trump, but the Bushes weren't great either. They weren't exactly conservative.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're not fiscally responsible. To say they're less fiscally responsible than the Democrats, right? Right.
Nobody's really fiscally.
Clinton and we were talking about, and Newt Gingrich achieved a level of fiscal responsibility with the end of the Cold War and with a certain prosperity bump that we had there in the 90s, right?
Right.
And Bush had every intention of sort of maintaining that. That wasn't, but September 11th happened. And
Right.
so he blamed all of his deficits on the war on terror
Of course.
and keeping the economy going in spite of that. And the Democrats didn't really fight him on that because
Of course not.
because of how united we were. They were willing to spend more, right?
Right.
And then, I would, when you say Reagan has a reputation for being very fiscally responsible, but if you look at his actual budgets, there was a lot of deficit spending there.
Sure.
Partly because he faced 100%, like the Senate and the House were all Democrats, so they're spending whatever they want, and because we were still in the Cold War, and he wanted to do missile defense, which really
Right.
helped break the back, help win the Cold War.
Sure,
His
maybe.
missile defense stuff and types of things were, but there were areas that he wanted to spend less, but because he didn't have control of Congress, he did. Now, right, the
Right.
Republicans have the excuse of having all three houses of Congress. They don't have
Right.
Reagan's limitations. So,
Right.
so with with Grover Norquist, they saw these deficits were getting so big under Obama, who was using as well the 2008 financial crisis,
Of course.
right? That
There's
the
always
Republicans started doing the bailout under them, and he just sort of continued it and had his big spending plan, right?
right.
And then Biden comes in and with his shovel ready, whatever type of stuff, and just is like, well, I mean, Biden was not a president,
No,
shall
yeah,
we
of
say.
course not. Yeah,
So
yeah.
whoever was there, the auto pen was just signing whatever he wanted. And he had
Like
for a
Doug
period of
Flutie.
time, he had Congress there to give him that.
Right.
So it's true. When we weren't running major deficits or at wartime, people weren't doing this.
And it's
This is not something you look back in history and see
right.
Thomas Jefferson,
Right.
in their great debates, threatening government shutdowns,
Right.
right?
And yeah, but, right. And of course, like of late, it's like nobody seems to, and everybody has an excuse, right? It's like first, it's
Yeah.
like the 2008, the war on terror, the war on drugs, the war, 9/11, and then of course now more recently COVID, of course, is going to be a huge excuse for spending lots and lots of money. But still, in theory, and throughout history, it is usually the Republicans that want to spend less and want to try to hold people to some sort of fiscal responsibility, and the Democrats want to spend
Especially
more.
when we're not in wartime,
Right.
right?
Right.
So,
Now,
our deficit should be much lower if we
yeah,
were in character as a Republican.
right. So yes, and so now Trump flipped things a little bit with his first shutdown, which is actually the longest shutdown ever, which was kind of like Republicans were actually trying to do what was it, like put more funding for the wall, I think, or something like that was the big holdout. But aside from that, like most of the time, it's the Republicans trying to not spend, and in this case, that's the same. The Republicans are trying to hold out on an extra expense that the Democrats want to add in, which is they want to eliminate a cut, right? They want to eliminate a big cut that by the way, has already gone through law, right? Like they already voted on this. They already decided this is what we're going to do as a nation. We're going to take this extra provision, and the provision is that basically they are eliminating a part of a coverage for the Affordable Care Act for non-expansion states. It's complicated. Like I almost don't even want to go through it all because it's like people's eyes will just kind of like glaze over. But all you need to know is that it regards Medicaid, and it regards the way the Affordable Care Act interfaces with Medicaid in certain states with certain people, right? And of course, both sides have their own scare tactic with regard to the propaganda, the spin that they put on this shutdown, right? And the Republicans will say that, well, the Democrats want to just spend lots of money on illegal immigrants, and that this interface allows illegal immigrants to get a hold of money from the federal government.
Yeah. And,
And then,
there's some nuggets of truth in that. How it's
yeah,
presented
eh,
is definitely weighted in the Republicans' favor, but
of course.
there's some facts there.
There's so yeah, right. Like but yeah, I should say each one of these spins, of course, and that's the beauty of a propaganda spin is there's always going to be an element of truth there, right?
Mhm.
And the Democrats' spin is that if we don't submit to their additional expense to taking that provision out, that everybody's health insurance premiums are going to double tomorrow, right? So, and again, there's a very, very, very small fraction of truth, but not a very big one. So we're gonna go into that today and kind of kick that
Yeah,
off.
prognostications on the future have a sort of a noble quality, right?
All
Well,
right.
everybody said the tariffs would generate runaway premiums and things like this, right? In capitalism, the insurance companies know if they charge more, they're going to have fewer customers. And so
Yeah.
they're constrained by competition, they're constrained by capitalism. They would love to bump them up, but the subsidies essentially will reduce their profitability. Right? There's only so much they can do. But will there be no rise? That would be naive. You would see some rise.
Right.
Everybody's doubling overnight, right? I don't buy that either.
No, no, yeah, right. So right. So let's start with this. This is the second longest one ever. I think is we're at 20 day 26, 27. I don't know. We're up there anyway. The longest one was 35. I think was Trump's first term. But um, one thing I want to clear up off the bat is that the both sides are saying this too. They're saying it's the other side's fault that there is a shutdown. All right. I just want to be 100% clear about this. There is no question that it is the Democrats' fault. No question. And here's why. The Republicans want the government not to be shut down, and the Democrats keep stopping them from allowing the government to keep going, right? So, like, there's no question. Now, I get the nuance, right? We're going to talk about the nuance,
Yeah.
but let's start with that. There's just no question that the Democrats are the
12
ones stopping.
times. 12 times they've said, here, would you allow the government to keep going with a clean bill? And 12 times the Democrats have said no. So yeah,
Exactly.
they have to own that. They have to own that.
Right, right. And I think we need to, that's the thing. Like, I don't get me wrong, like I would respect a Democrat that says, look, we are holding up the government, and here's why. I would be fine with that take. But mostly that's not what I hear online on the media. Mostly I hear it's like, oh no, no, this is just the Republicans refusing to deal. And I'm like, no. Because the deal is separate. First of all, and there's two major reasons. Number one, like I said, this has already been passed into law. So we've already decided what we were going to do, right? Now the Democrats want to take it back, and they're using the fact that funding requires more votes than just passing the law. They're using that like technicality as leverage. And that's fine, right? That's part of politics. And I'm even okay with the Democrats saying, like, look, this is what we're doing. We've got leverage. We've got political leverage. Let's use it. I would be fine with the Democrats saying that, but they're not saying that. They're like, oh no, it's the Republicans' fault. I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not. It's not even close.
They're counting on a favorable media to spin for them, or low information voters, or people that just want to espouse any bad effect to Donald Trump.
Of course, right? It's all Donald Trump's fault. When Trump is he not in the Senate? So I don't know exactly how he. I mean, of course he has some influence, but it's like, all right,
Well, that's the thing is, if I can interject very
yeah,
quickly,
yeah.
is by shutting down the government, they give Donald Trump even more discretion over spending, right?
Right.
We're cutting back on different things, and right, what he wants to go forward, what his priorities are, those are going forward. Right? Is the Democrats are sort of lesser ones that are feeling the pain on this. And I
Yep.
think that's why people are like, they're feeling like what we said when we talked about this. This is that the Democrats are overplaying a very mediocre hand. We're not saying they don't have a hand,
Yep. They
but
got one.
they're acting like their hand is the nuts and it is not.
Yeah, not even close. Not even close. Right. And it's evident by the fact that number one, they don't have the majority of votes, right? Even in the Senate, there's several Democrats who are voting with the Republicans who see the reason of the Republican side.
Fetterman, right?
Yeah, Fetterman. I think there's three, but I didn't look them all up. But Fetterman's definitely one of them. But yeah,
Yeah.
so they need like six more or something like that. But yeah, too many probably to get if they remain united, but it is what it is. But so that's the one thing. The reason I say I don't understand why this even happens is because not because I don't understand the mechanism, but because I just don't understand how we can pass a law in America and then that law doesn't automatically include the funding it requires. That's part of my confusion, right? Like I feel like it should, like intuitively, but I get that it doesn't,
Right.
and I
Well,
even sort of
because the
understand why.
debt ceiling, as long as we're below the debt ceiling, like, so say we balance the budget for 5 years,
Mhm.
right? And so our debt went way down. So say the debt ceiling would stay at where it's at. Let's just say it's at $40 trillion, right? So
And
right
it
now
is.
we want it to go above 40 trillion. But say we have 5 years of fiscally responsible, and so now it's down here at 30 trillion. And
Right.
so then we pass something, and we have to borrow. That's going to be funded because we're not going to hit the ceiling. It's because this debt ceiling, it's
Right.
just the amount of money we're borrowing. The debt ceiling is a separate
Yeah.
law that has
Right.
to be mechanism, and that's the leverage that they're using.
Right. Yeah. Like intuitively, like, I guess, right. And then when the nation was founded, right, that was everything was a little bit simpler back then. It was like, this is the amount of money that we need to get. We tax people for it. This is how much money we have. This is how much
Well,
money we
yeah,
use. Right. Like that's like, and that's how it works in your own household finances. And like, yeah, you don't have to tell me that this isn't like household finances. That's fine. But I just feel like if we've already decided that this is what we're going to do by law, there should be some compulsion to that end, but I
right.
get the leverage. I get
Yeah. Well,
now.
the history. Can we go into the history a little bit? It's a little
Yeah,
bit
yeah, yeah. Hit us
interesting.
with it.
So Andrew Jackson is the one who's responsible for us borrowing money because it seemed
That's
before like nations would borrow money for wars or for whatever, and then if they didn't feel like paying it back, they just go into bankruptcy. And it was always like really risky to do that. And so the United States had some war debt from the War of 1812 or whatever, and um, and nobody really expected us to pay it back. But Andrew Jackson, when he's like, no, we're going to have a policy where we pay our debts.
That's it.
So we paid all our debts, and all of a sudden it was like, oh shit! And we've always paid our debts. So people love lending money to us,
Right.
right?
And I
And
hope it stays there.
right, and so no, but we still had a tradition of when we weren't at wartime to get back to a balanced budget. Now,
Right.
obviously, we would have depressions and boom cycles through the 1800s, and
Right.
then with following the Great Depression, we've all been operating on a different Keynesian sort of pump private. But even then, we were able to, after the World War II, pay down our debt and
Right.
get back to a sort of balance. And it looked like, right, the deficit spending through the Reagan years, after the end of the Cold War, though, right, with the reduction in military spending, bases being closed, things like that, that we were going to get back to, right,
Right.
balanced budgets under Clinton, right? Obviously, we got
Right.
hit with the war, but right now we're at peacetime. I would
Right.
like to see a lot more belt tightening, right? So that and the Republicans' incentive should be that the Democrats will lose this power over them,
Right.
right? All we have to do is balance the budget and have that national debt go down, and the farther away we get from that debt ceiling, we're just now all of a sudden this becomes a moot point, and
Right.
Democrats can't do this stuff.
And of course, right. So yeah, we've talked about this before, but like obviously this is the problem with fiscal policy in America altogether, and probably every nation has the same issue. It's really easy to go to the American public and say, we would like to give you more money. Right. Like anytime there's a program like Affordable Care Act where it's like, we don't want you to have to pay for health insurance, we'll do it for you. Well, that's a really easy sale, right? Like no American person is going to come up. You go up to them and say, "Hey, I would like to pay for your medical care," and they're going to be like, "No, no, 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 no." Right? Like nobody's going to do that. It's very, very rare. And conversely, on the savings side, like with regard to the budget, on the amount of money that we take in for America, it's very easy to say we're going to take less taxes from you. Right? Like that's a really easy sale. It's really easy for someone to say, we're going to give you a tax cut. We're going to stop raising taxes. You can have more money in your pocket. Anytime you give something to the American people, they're going to eat it up. The hard part is going the other way. And so, unfortunately, for the government to be in fiscal balance, you either have to make more money or spend less, right? Like either way, you have to do
Entitlements,
something.
yeah.
And both of those are the things that American people don't want to hear, right? So, like, one thing to know about this situation is that the ACA provision that they're trying to take, that they're trying to make sure is back in, that stays in, that we
Funded, yeah.
removed, only came in during COVID. It's a very new provision, right? It's a very like recent addition. And it was like, here, COVID happens and we're having like a really bad crisis in America.
Yeah.
And, here we are. And someone's like, look, we need to do this. We're going to take,
For crisis, yeah.
this is a crisis, right? We're going to help you out with some of the medical expenses. And at the time, for principled reasons, I don't like it anyway, which is fine. But I acknowledge that at the time, it was probably far more necessary than it is today, right? Because now we don't have COVID and now it's over. And so, like, the fact that people want to, the fact that the Democrats want to keep spending money on this forever just because we implemented it during a crisis scenario, right?
Yeah.
Like, we
That's
shouldn't
very
be in
on
the habit.
brand. That's very on brand.
Right. And to be fair, it's kind of on brand for Republicans too now. Unfortunately, it's like they'll use an excuse to spend something. Both sides. The problem is, this is the problem, and I think this is the heart of things. I think the Republicans have noticed the kind of victory, the kind of influence that it buys when the left says we're going to give you more stuff. Right? Like they realize how popular that is, right? Because if you got two people standing in front of you, this is a game we learned when we were like going up to be senior president, like of your high school. One senior would be like, and I'm going to give you pizza every Friday. And everybody's like, yeah, we'll vote for that person. So it's really easy for the Democrats to swoop in and say, and I'm going to give you free medical care. And everybody's like, yay, right? But the problem is the Republicans look at it, they're like, dang, how am I going to beat that? So now it's just like, if you can't beat them, join them. So now they're like, well, I'm going to give you something too. And so it's gotten to the point where both sides are just trying to eat that influence, that political capital up any way they can.
Well, yeah, like when Trump was going to cut taxes on tips, that very quickly became something that Kamala was like, oh,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Right. So that's the game, right? That's the political game to this. And I do want to take a few moments to discuss the specifics of who would actually because here's the Democrat claim. The Democrat claim is that the premiums are going to double tomorrow. Well, here's the truth. Here's how it actually plays out. The premiums wouldn't double for kids. They wouldn't double for elderly, anybody who's on Social Security. They wouldn't double for disabled people. They wouldn't double for people with a job because they get their insurance through their work almost always. It wouldn't double for like people with like on and on and on. There's like 1 million people who are just completely unaffected by this. The only people it affects are people in like 5 states where the state didn't expand Medicaid. And only in those states is it for people who are able-bodied adults with no kids.
Yeah.
For that very small group of people,
yeah.
they might see a premium increase if
they should just, they should just go without health insurance.
Right, yeah, it would be
probably able-bodied and don't have kids.
Yeah, never mind the fact that insurance is a racket in the first place. Like I could do a whole episode on explaining why insurance. By the way, quick side note, the only reason insurance companies exist is they get more money from you than they give you back. That's the whole point of an insurance company model. That's what they do for a living, is take more money from you than they give. And so people are like, "Oh no, my premium's good." Now, I know the reasons to get insurance. I'm not telling you not to. Please do not take this as like medical advice or financial advice.
Yeah.
But I'm just letting you know that like this is really not that big of a deal. And for the few people who it is a big deal for, like the very, very few, they probably shouldn't be on insurance, number one. They could move to a state that this doesn't affect them at if it really is that big of a deal. And finally, they're able-bodied. They should just go out and get a job.
Yeah. And if they're in the country illegally, they should self-deport.
Right.
Now, there's probably free healthcare back in their country.
Well, possibly. Now, so okay, let's talk about that. That's the other side of the spin, right? The Republicans say that this is all for illegal immigrants, right? Okay. Mostly no, partially yes, mostly no. So here's the game that's played here. The part of it that does actually go directly from the federal government to illegal immigrants is the part that's set aside for emergency events, like people that go
Medicaid,
into the
yeah.
emergency. Right. That's the only part that like goes directly from the federal government to the illegal immigrants. Now, there are other ways where the money finds its way to illegal immigrants, but it's not a direct thing. So it's like both sides are kind of saying a technical truth, but in reality, it's like a so the way that it goes through other things to the illegal immigrants is that the federal government subsidizes it with the states that expanded Medicaid. It subsidizes up to 90% of various Medicaid cases, various people who are buying insurance and get it subsidized by the federal government. Now, that money directly doesn't go to an illegal immigrant, but it does go to the state's hands. And then the states may choose to offer their own programs, knowing that they've already got all this money coming, right? And so that's the game, right? The game is the money goes from person A to person B to person C. While it may not necessarily go directly from person A to person C, it still makes its way to person C. And so it would be kind of a lie for the Democrats to say it doesn't go to illegal immigrants because it does. It just doesn't go there directly, right? And this is the game that it's almost frustrating to even like have to go through all these like technicalities because like this is the game that politicians play all the time, and I'm like, it like almost it just like it's like head explodes just trying to follow it all, right? And like, yes, the money gets there, right? It would be a lie to say it doesn't. But it would also be a lie to say that this is directly affecting illegal. It's not really. It's like that's not again like the people that this affects on the premium side. It's a very small percentage of people that it affects on the illegal immigrant side too. So both of them are playing these margins, right? Like this really small game, and I don't know. I mean, yeah, they're both sort of telling the truth, but
Well, I mean, it is they want more money to do that,
yeah,
and at the end of the day, the Republicans just say we've already decided how much money we're already deficit spending. They can even say, hey, that's a great idea. We'd love to pay for that if we could afford it. But the
right,
whole point of this is we've reached our debt cap.
thank
We
you,
clearly cannot afford it, right?
right,
If we could
like
pay for this, yes, I'd do it. But we have to borrow money to do it? No. Right?
right,
That's the common sense. That's the common man explanation to this. Is just look, we're at a debt ceiling. That should be a sign that is we should only be spending when we absolutely need to. Right?
right,
One, twos, and yeah, that would be great. All of a sudden, right, put that on the list for when we cut the
right, right,
deficit. Right,
right, right,
we'll
right.
circle back to that,
This is my,
but
my
it's
wish
not a
list.
time. It's not a time to be adding new wish lists when you're this far in debt.
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, just like in your personal household finances, right? Like, there are times where you have good weeks. There's time where you have bad weeks. On the good weeks, if you want to go out and go out to eat, go out for a date with the wife or something, or take the kids out for something else, great. But there are weeks where you have to tighten the belt. There are weeks where you are capped, where your credit card bill is $18,000. You're literally like barely making ends meet. On those weeks, when the kids are like, "Daddy, let's go out and get lobster," you have to be like, "Whoa, why don't we go out and get fish sticks?" Like that's when you got to tighten that. I would love to go out tomorrow and buy an Aston Martin Volante Vision, but I can't afford it, so I'm not gonna. Christian, you all right? Your thing just went blurry.
Sorry, I was just
Right.
coughing.
Oh, no
Um,
worries. All right, great. So,
that's all.
and the other thing to note, and this is kind of an important point for my philosophy, although it may not be as important to some other people here. I'm a big states' rights guy, right?
Mhm.
And so I think there's only like 5, maybe 6 states that didn't that didn't opt in to the Medicaid expansion. And that's their right. Like legally, that's their right to do this. Their right is to not spend a bunch of extra money, to not take a bunch of extra money from the federal government because they think it's philosophically opposed to their ideals, and to not they're trying to not be the kind of state that just hands out money all the time, right? That's their state's rights. Now, for the federal government to come in behind them and kind of be like, no, you have to. and you have to cover all these people, does infringe on the state's rights. And I really feel like that. I feel like, look, this is their legal right. ACA isn't supposed to be done by the federal government at all. At all.
This was what the Supreme Court said, like where they created a marketplace, a forced marketplace, things like this, and it was decided it was legal because it was a fine and Congress can fine people. Anyway, we have to deal with the realities of the ACA, but adding extra or maintaining COVID subsidies is a common sense thing where if we can afford it, sure. We can't afford it. Sorry. COVID subsidies go down and we just go back to the normal Obamacare subsidies, which are still out there and still very generous. Right.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and get for all the liberals out there, for the Democrats out there, I'm going to give you like a little leeway here. This is where I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. What I will say is, if you're going to do ACA, right? If you're going to, it should be, in my opinion, it should be income based, right? It should be for the people who need it the most, right? And what's going on right now with the ACA is just weird, right? Like, it's not really for the people who are poor. It's for the people who are like poor and so like the reason that there's this, what they call a coverage gap in the first place, is because like you could be literally out of work, making nothing, and you should qualify. That should qualify you. If anything qualifies you for a handout, having no money at all should qualify you. Yeah. But somehow it doesn't. Somehow people that are actually making like 300% of the federal poverty line are qualified, while the people who make nothing are not. And so that's the one place where I'll give you like I don't understand why we do it this way. We should at least get. Now, of course, what the Democrats want to do is let's just cover everybody. And what I'm saying is, if we cover anybody, it should be the poorest of the poor and not the others. But
for subsidies, you mean subsidies?
Yeah, for subsidies, for any kind of handout whatsoever. Like Social Security makes no sense to me for the same reason, because it's like the people who are richer actually pay into it longer and get more out of it. Like, I would think you'd want to give it to the poor people, but what do I know? I'm not an entitlement guy, right? I don't think any of these, pass muster. So
the Democratic theory of Marxism is they want everybody to be on handouts. They want everybody to get from the government, so it expands that government. Anyway, it's a philosophical thing. They insist that everybody have that connection to the government.
So anybody who they can give stuff to, which is that's the game here, right? That's the biggest issue is, right, people won't say no to more stuff. So you get them hooked on it, and now they're on it. And then if you go like you reach this cliff where it's like, oh no, your premiums might double, and they're like, oh no, oh my God, I already have this handout, even though they're not supposed to, even though they didn't 6 years ago, right? Like, everything was just fine 6 years ago, but now they're like, they think like they're going to die if they don't get it.
Yeah,
or something.
Because there was a temporary boost, right? Nothing as permanent as a temporary boost. But yeah, I mean, for Social Security, if they take your money, everybody's going to want that back. I mean, right? George W. Bush, who was the president, has this huge presidential pension and other things. He's not turning down his Social Security benefits. Nobody is, right? Because you paid that in. Like you feel like that's yours. It's not necessarily like so.
And I mean, my father is one of the staunchest conservatives ever to live, right? Like, since I was born, he was like, boy, if I could just stop paying for Social Security right now, I wouldn't take a dime from it. Like, and he continued to say that for like 25 years. But now that he's on it, he's like, no, now I've paid for my whole life.
He paid for it, yeah.
Right. So it's like, and I feel I get it. But anyway, the only other thing to mention about this shutdown is, right, like you said, now Trump's got some additional leeway. He's got some additional leverage of his own. So being in the shutdown is put people where now the federal employees are just now missing, I think, their first full check. And Trump is able to just like lay people off, just like, and like, Trump, he doesn't do things in stages. He doesn't do things like halfway. So that's not like a temporary furlough where they get to come back when things are like peachy. No, he's just like gone. 4,000 people, zip, like they're out of there. And so, I don't know that that's what the Democrats really wanted to see. But of course, there's legal challenges to that too. and it's going to be another fight. Which
Well, ultimately, I think he's can be backed up. His ability to manage the executive is pretty clear,
it is.
and
There's
under the shutdown, right? These are the risks that they take. They're
right,
sort of like bad bullfighters. Well, they're bad card players, right?
right,
So,
right,
right, it's what they made their point, but they can't win the hand. So
right.
they just need to move on to something that's winnable.
Yeah, yeah. So great, Greyhound friend. We're talking about the shutdown. Although we're actually about to pivot to the ballroom now because we've probably beat
Well,
that horse to the ground.
let's take a moment here. If there's
Yeah,
a topic that you would like our take on, we'll give our people that are watching right now, put in chat there if there's a topic you'd like both Eddie and I to give our take on right
definitely.
now.
Yeah, anybody? Yeah, we'll give you a couple seconds to think about that. Yeah, the shutdowns I feel like should just never happen, but I also don't. I'll admit that I need to research the mechanisms for funding a little bit more because I don't know all the rules on it. You know, it's a very complex at that level. Non-binary people. We actually did a whole show on that, but I think that that's one of I will say that's one of Trump's chief successes was that he was able to just executive order take trans out of sports right away, like just boom right off the top, take them
Well,
right out of the military.
their fight is right. That's still going slow. Some states it's still in. Obviously, true non-binary people is such a small percentage. True transgender people is like 0.0018%.
Yeah,
There's a social contagion aspect of this. Obviously, we oppose their political power because they're trying to outsize their actual influence.
right,
The medical professionals, especially counselors, that we are not that should help these people. But there's some very common sense guardrails you got to put on, right?
right,
I.e., right, that minors who don't have the right to buy cigarettes or get a tattoo,
yep,
right, should delay any type of permanent sex change thing while they're underage. This is very common sense,
right.
right? And so our heart is out for people who are non-binary. I feel like it is
I
very
agree.
much a culture situation that has exploded this, and that wanting to increase the numbers, inflate the numbers has to do with political power. So I'm very cynical about that movement.
Yeah. So Joe said minors get nose jobs. I mean, they probably shouldn't, but if
Well,
you're
their parents are signing off on it, I guess. So,
yeah,
but yeah, even then that's problematic because your nose is still
yeah,
growing. You're still
growing
haven't
just
reached your
fine.
full adult height. A good doctor would say, yeah, we'll fix your nose. Let's wait till you reach adulthood and your school stops getting bigger.
Right. When I was growing up, it's funny because nonconformists always kind of sort of look alike, and ironically, but like when I was growing up, the go-to nonconformist group were called goths, right? And they were had lots of piercings, always dark makeup, dark clothes, and stuff like that. I think they might call them emos now, but I'm not sure. I don't
Yeah,
really know. I don't follow that kind of trend, but that was the nonconformist when I was growing
yeah,
up. Like now, the nonconformist is trans, right? Like that's the and make no mistake, both are choices, right? Both of those nonconformist groups almost always are. Now, I do grant that there's a few small medical cases where somebody is actually experiencing gender dysphoria, but most of them are just that's the nonconformist group. That's just the game. And there's
yeah.
nothing, they want to play that game. They want
And
to
it's a
play it.
way to gain acceptance within a very small subculture there's so few people who are truly that by saying I'm transgender. Now you've got this support group of people and there's
Yep.
resources now, and then you get to be, well, not anymore, but in 2022, the height of woke, you became a group that nobody could criticize, right?
Right.
You were impervious to any type of criticism. That
Yep.
bubble has burst, right? And we are
And
now
this,
past that. But that was some heady stuff. Everyone
yep.
likes to be a part of a victim class that nobody can criticize.
Right. And this almost became, thankfully, I think the Supreme Court's kind of put a stop to it, but this almost became the only protected class that you could elect into, right? Like every other
Yeah.
protected class was like you just immutable. If you were black, you were black. If
Yeah.
you were Hispanic, if you were a girl, but this was almost became the only one that it's not protected, thankfully, but it almost became the only one that you could be like, I want to be X and
Yeah.
then become it,
Yeah.
and it's like, but anyway, all right,
All right.
let's talk about the ballroom.
The big,
And
beautiful ballroom.
the big, beautiful, and I gotta say up front, if I didn't know better, I would be just astounded at why this is even in the news. Like, I would just be like, like if I didn't know anything about American, politics, if I didn't know anything at all, and like I was just from Russia and I was visiting, and somebody like ran up to me in the streets like, Trump is renovating the White House. I'd be like, so? In Mother Russia, we renovate building all the time. Like I don't, like this is just something that everybody does.
Right. Yeah. So my big distinction here is the White House is a working building. So like, all right. So growing up in California,
yeah,
we would do this field trip every couple of years to the Pio Pico Mansion. So back before California was a state, it was ruled by land dons. California's Mexico. And so the Don that had owned all the land that was the city I grew up in, Whittier, was Don Pio Pico. And we went out to his mansion, his estate. So it's a one-story adobe, right? We're talking 4-foot thick adobe walls. It's a single story, right? And built around 1812, 1815 area, right? And we're walking around, and they're like, "Don't touch those walls! Don't touch those walls!" like we're gonna damage 4-foot thick adobe walls, right? My buddy who'd moved here from England, right? He lived in Stratford, England, right? He had friends that lived in 350-year-old houses. They used to go play in ruins as kids, play kids games in ruins from the 12th century, right? So they're like, "This is 1800s, and you're saying don't touch it? Like what?" Now, so it was a historical site. Nobody was using that for anything. It was just a preserved, of what a Don ranch looked like in 1812. And it was strictly for a field trip. So I got that. And people visit the White House. But it is not a historical building to say, ooh, look at this building that we built in the 1800s that used to house presidents. No, it is a working building. It is a working residence. It is where we host events. We do the actual work of government is done. And so it primarily needs to be how to best meet the needs of the work that needs to be done. So when we talk about it, there's been lots of pushes to make the White House a historical building with all those historical protections, and they've always been exempted. And this is important, right? So the high school I went to as well, you've seen it. It was the high school in Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Right? It was sort of this Art Deco. It was built in the early 30s and very unique for California. It has more of a Midwest feel. Right. And lots of, especially after that movie, there were lots of groups who were trying to put preservation things, make that a National Register historic building kind of thing like that.
Save the clock tower.
To protect it. And I'm like, yes, please protect my high school or whatever. No, that's the naive. They were always pushed that away whenever sort of money, like subsidies came with it, because you can't do maintenance on a building that has all those, like when they needed to put a elevator in, right, for handicap access, to do that on a historical structure is like
a nightmare.
Unbelievably, adds so much more red tape and expense. And so they were always pushing that away, saying, no, we do not want this. We want to function as a high school. We are educating students. This is not a place for people to come say, oh, they filmed Back to the Future here. Wasn't this cute? And so that's the main distinction here. So historians were given the chance before this demolition to go in, document everything, digitally document everything. So if you want the history, it's going to be preserved. There's lots of pictures of that. But the function of the East Wing was it was insufficient to what needed to be done.
Right.
So Trump is doing this, and he's not doing it at government expense. But so the objection to it, I think, is pretty nakedly anti-Trump.
Oh yeah, of course.
but it's also there is this connection to history, and there are parts of the people watch stories about the history of the White House, and there's the Lincoln bedroom. If you've toured the White House, there's this great historical tour, and it's so there's a feeling to sort of treat it like that.
Yeah, yeah,
But the East Wing is really just from World War II. It's
yeah.
not anything built by in a
Right,
and really it was to cover up new defensive like bunkers and places that we needed because we were at war,
right, right.
right? So redoing that, very common sense. Like if there was a place to do it, that's where it's done, right? But there will always be when you make a change, people that preferred it the way it was before. See that now when anybody changes a house, people like it the way it is redone or like it the way it was before. But this does make it more usable for hosting state events. The White House is a major when we bring people to the White House, it's meant to intimidate them, so
Yeah,
that we get them on a better negotiating. We make them want to feel more like they want to please us or something like that, right? That's
yep,
why it's really really formal, right? And it's gorgeous inside. It's really clean and everything's immaculate. It's designed to impress. And people think that that's
yep.
gaudy, but it's designed and all of Russia, like the Kremlin. All their
Oh, yeah.
stuff does the same thing to a high degree. It's meant to just
Yep.
intimidate you and put people
Everybody
in a
does.
state of awe, right?
Yeah,
And then we'd have these events in a tent and make VIPs use a porta potty,
right,
right? So, it's like, okay, let's common sense here. Let's build a real reception hall. We can use it more. We're already using the Rose Garden more since Trump made renovations. We can use this more for events, um, and I think ultimately once Trump is out of the picture, this will be a non-controversial thing, especially once it's done and we see that it matches the DC style, matches White House style, and adds so much more value, at least that we know.
right,
Now, the one thing that they've said, like, all right, well, we're for it, right? If they would say everything that I said, they agree with and say, well, why don't we get blueprints? Why wasn't there a debate period where people could comment on this stuff like that? Well,
mm,
because it's a working building, so
right,
there's obviously secret things or stuff underneath. We don't get all the blueprints for security purposes. We don't know what's underground, right? And
right,
what needs to be built in there. And the White House is exempted from all of these type of things that would another historical building or something else would go
right,
through. Um, so we sort of, you know, uh, have to accept that this is something that we've granted to the executive to do
right.
and allowed something to do and take the best judgment that this is and be thankful that the government's not paying for it when we're in a deficit period.
Right.
That's
Now,
my take.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah, and that's basically how I see it too. Although, uh, I think we should. All right, so this is what we'll do. Let's entertain some of the objections
Sure.
to this. So one might be, uh, 300. There's $300 million or something to the project roughly, and it's
Between two and three.
mostly being donated by private donors. One question might be, what do they get out of it?
All right, so that's good. So during Donald Trump's next 3 years as president, they
Right.
will probably have more access to them. They'll probably be able to be invited to any events that happen. In there, like the state dinner.
Hmm.
These are the type of people that donate this type of money would be shortlisted for ambassadorships, which still have to
Hmm.
be approved by Congress. But
Sure.
there's certain sort of cushy jobs that very wealthy people would like to, hey, I'd like to spend a year as an ambassador in the Maldives. I
Hmm.
could something like that.
Would
Um,
be nice. I would
and
like to too, by the way.
yeah, 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 yeah. So
I'll do,
sign me up too. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Um,
think I donated like $8 or something like
Yeah,
that. Doesn't it give me
Bali
a
needs
PG?
Bali needs my particular
Right.
ambassador skills. But
Absolutely.
yeah, these are very wealthy people get these sort of cushy appointments, right? They're not sending you to England or Saudi Arabia,
Mm.
right? If you're just if you're just a wealthy donor. But
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about a private citizen's ability to essentially buy their way into that kind of access.
All right. So that's been the case for both parties, right?
Sure.
They, it's
Oh
just,
no,
it's
yeah,
just
I'm not.
presidential, like those that donate big monies to the PAC for the campaigns
Sure,
are shortlisted for ambassadorships.
sure,
Now,
sure.
obviously, not State Department or not like heads
Yeah, of like a
like
cabinet
secretary,
position.
the
Right.
secretary level, right? Those have to be, but certain sort of jobs where you'd have career diplomats underneath them or something. They're just sort of the figurehead. But
Hmm.
you want somebody that very much aligns with you politically,
Right.
showing that paying this money shows that they align and they support your political structure, right? It's sort of putting your money where your mouth is. So you know somebody's going to be on your side. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been the type of patronage that's been around for a long time. With it obviously has to be government oversight. They have to say that we're not putting a criminal or somebody like
Yeah.
um, they still ambassadors still have to be approved by the Senate, but it's something like that. So yeah, for 3 years, these people would have a little more influence. Obviously, the next administration, that's gone. It's wiped
Maybe.
clean.
Maybe.
Right now, and maybe their names are just in the historical records. We could record these people helped build this, and that might be enough for them to have their name associated with something permanently in the White House. They can put that in their personal histories or things like that.
I mean, I don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying that this is going to be a catastrophe, but I can definitely
Mhm.
see the potential for a problem, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's definitely the kind of access that I don't want somebody to be able to buy. And I mean, I acknowledge that they can, but I don't like it. If I, in my perfect, magical wave the magic wand world, I would take a lot of money out of politics altogether. Like I would take those
I
super
understand.
PACs away. I would make it like an individual contribution thing only and capped so that you can't just like, be Elon Musk or George Soros and just like boom, but bulldoze your way through the. But I don't know. But I'll have to think about that some more. That's one objection. Well, another one might be while the objections to it are fickle, isn't the changing of the thing itself kind of like just a Trump trying to make his mark on history or on society or on.
Yeah, he can leave a permanent mark. I mean, it's true. It'll be something that will mark his presidency. But he has real justifications for it because they regularly hold events,
I
any type
agree.
of events that right, maybe 10 or more a year that they have to rent tents. If it's
Right.
raining, it becomes a disaster. It just doesn't feel as formal. Like it feels like a stopgap. Like, oh, we'll do
Yeah.
this until the ballroom's finished, or because the ballroom is, you know, not available. This is why we're using the tent. But it was kind of over and over again. Um,
Right.
that it's something that and frankly, the history of the East Wing was not so um, bulletproof, right?
Right.
It's not like he's destroying the Lincoln bedroom for this,
Right.
right? Or
Right.
putting it inside the residence, right?
I mean,
That if he was gutting the residence, which Truman did, um, if he was doing that, I can see people being up in arms, right? But this is the
mhm.
one thing I've heard of people bemoaning is that there are some trees that are being removed that were
Right. The
planted by
garden.
presidents. Yeah.
The garden,
So
Jackie Kennedy's garden or whatever is kind of
no,
like,
Jack Kennedy's Garden's over on the West Wing.
well, part of
This
it
is this
is
is
on
this
the.
is these are trees planted by presidents, including
Right.
like Thomas Jefferson and Andrew Jackson, like 200-year-old trees. Now I don't know. No, we certainly have the technology and the means to lift those and replant
Keep them.
them.
Right.
I haven't heard if that's happening, but they're certainly not going to be in the same place they were if they were where because the building is so much larger than what existed before.
Right. Right. And so another obvious objection is people are worried that it won't like maintain the historic like the historic style, I guess, or the like the aesthetic style of the White House because he's made it kind of
The
like
blueprints he's put up
Mar-a-Lago.
have said it's exterior at least is going to be neoclassical matching. Now
Sure.
the interior, right, won't be, but every
It'll
president
look
gets to
like
redo the interiors.
the interior is going to look like Mar-a-Lago, so to speak. So
Yeah,
it's fair to say,
well,
right? Like
yeah, it'll be, but every
gold.
president can redo the interior. right? The
Oh,
next
yeah,
president
that's a
doesn't
good
like
point.
that, right? I've seen a thing. It was it was the bottom of a newel post, or no, of a like a door frame. It was kind of had the sunburst pattern from the White House, and it had 8 layers of paint because 8 different administrations had come in and repainted their own color scheme on it
Right.
until, all right, now we're gonna do new wood. But
Yeah.
like, so everybody goes in. Trump went in, repainted the Oval Office to his thing. So if the interior, you don't like the interior of the ballroom, that is fine. The next president can do the colors the way he wants it
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
But
Don't go to the
the
mall.
outside structure is going to be neoclassical, which matches the rest of the White House in D.C. largely. So I think those objections are hollow. If you don't
Yeah.
like the Mar-a-Lago or the gaudy style, then do something more tasteful when you're
Right.
in office.
Or don't attend events there, right? Like, if it's just, yeah, I think people often forget that this is like the president's house. Like, how would you feel if somebody told you couldn't renovate yours, right? Like, I mean, people forget that. People forget this is where he's living. Even people that rent can essentially paint, right? Like, you can do whatever they want on the inside. They can do, they have to maybe put it back by the time they're done or something. But so I think people lose that. But let's see. David says, remember now and every now and then you need to tell the audience what you. Yeah, no, you're very, very true. So yeah, we're right now we're discussing the ballroom, although we
Yeah.
pretty much went through each
Right.
objection.
So part of the objection too, initially, the initial demo was the facade of that east wing, and some people thought that facade that it was like a covered portico where cars could drive in. It was like another entrance, was being knocked down. But then they saw that no, we're actually demoing the whole east wing, right? And I think because it's going to be rebuilt, that it can handle the first lady. There are other functions or other stuff that are done in the east wing that the office space, the space just wasn't good for, wasn't had it needed to be redone. Like, so the hallway connecting the big ballroom, right? So imagine you've got in the middle here the house, then you've got this hallway, and then you got the big ballroom on the end. They
Right.
knocked down that hallway connector, which has a lot of meeting space and different stuff. That's
Right.
all getting destroyed as well, which some
Mhm.
people like. That's also just dates back to the 40s, World War II.
Right.
Um, but will it be rebuilt? Probably 2 stories, have more space and be more functional, so that it can be used for the business of the executive of right, because
Right.
this is a working right. These aren't just pretty bedrooms for the tour. These are
Right.
going to be offices for the work of government.
Right. Yeah. And it's like this with campuses too. Like there's plenty of campuses that like date back, back and back and back. But Harvard has new buildings. Cambridge has new buildings. It's not like you can't put new stuff with old, historic, monuments. That's fine, right? Like, but not everything needs to be 100%. And
Yeah.
like you said, this is World War II stuff. This isn't the 18th century part of the White House. So
No.
I.
Yeah, I saw a rendering. It's not like if Trump had done this and he'd put like right by the Oval Office, essentially a 25-story Trump Tower that's gold, looks just like Trump Tower. It's like, which he can do,
Yes.
right? Technically, he's not doing that. He's like, you should be very grateful that
Right.
he's not
The-
doing something like that or putting that sort of mark on it, adding all this extra working office space, and that it's
you
going to
be
be
glad.
neoclassical, right? I think ultimately we do. People like things the way they were, kind of want to dip everything in amber. But if for some reason we move the whole White House function, executive office, to a new building somewhere and make the White House just for tour groups and a relic, then you
Right.
can do that. But as long as
Yeah.
it's the working center of the executive branch, you have to accept these renovations and the authority of the executive to do them.
Yes, I mean, side note to this, it is more secure too, technically. Like, so instead of just being outside, under a tent
Mhm.
in a porta potty, you've got an enclosed space that can be patrolled, it can be secured, it can be, an unknown floor plan to external sources. So, like, there's a million different reasons to do this. But yeah, anyway, so guys, yeah, essentially, largely today we talked about two things that I feel like just shouldn't be issues, but they are because our government is just
They're
It's
trying to
gotten to be
conceal common sense. People are trying to say if they can make enough fluster, if they disrupt our lives enough, or yell it out, right, they get to draw free cards. I think that
right.
was
Yeah, if you just whine enough, right? Like
yeah,
that was our rule, right? You just get whine enough, you get extra. You can just.
yeah.
But so yeah, so that's the game, right? And then both sides are obviously anything Trump does is like what always amazes me is that like we mentioned with Trump's first shutdown, Trump will repeatedly do things that if I didn't know anything at all, I would think is a Democrat thing to do, right? Like if I didn't know anything about American politics at all, and you told me the concept of tariffs, I'd be like, wow, that sounds very liberal, right? Very anti-free trade, extra taxes, like all this stuff.
Protectionism, yeah.
Right, right. It'd be like exactly to me what a liberal would do, but Trump is like over and over does what like Democrats would normally do, and they're like, no, because states' rights, like what? Like constantly they're like he's getting them to flip their positions into kind of like a conservative stand, which maybe is part of the genius of his plan. But anyway, yeah, so the shutdown, ridiculous. The ballroom renovation objections, ridiculous. So anyway, you have any final thoughts on this?
Well, I think the common man is more affected by the shutdown than the ballroom.
Agreed.
The Chancellor Seated Ballroom will probably only ever be on a tour. But the shutdown, while it's not affected me yet, could start affecting me here shortly. And there are more people that could be affected by that. But I think ultimately the solutions to all this is common sense. And even if the Democrats have to take it out,
Right.
I'm sorry, Trump is winning this.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next issue you can do. The shutdown is not something that you're adding value to.
Right. Yeah. Like in the abstract, people need to remember, like I said, when I started this thing off is, historically conservatives are the ones that don't want to spend more. So if you've got a situation where there's a standoff and we're not spending, the conservatives are default winning. Right. So that's something that the Democrats should probably remember. Like the conservatives, a real conservative would just be like, all right, we'll do this forever. We don't care. Right. But so the Democrats are the ones that are going to have to cave, I think. But we'll see. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. We're doing Thursdays and Sundays now. So please like, share, and subscribe. Tell everybody about the shift from Wednesday, Saturday to Thursday, Sunday for the time being. We're not going to be doing this on Thanksgiving, but aside from that, we're going to shoot for that as a schedule from now on so I can spend some time with my kids. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll catch you next time on Common Mansplaining.
Keep it coming.